Welcome, everybody. So what we're going to talk today about is the flat Earth and weather and the Kephalaia. And we're going to talk about the ebb and flow and the cosmic devices that run the functions of the changes of weather and temperature and moisture and humidity and all the changes that we see on Earth day to day. And we're going to talk about and explain how that mechanism and that device functions. So this information comes from the Book of Enoch and the Book of Giants and other ancient fragmentary scripts and texts. And what we're going to do is review some of the pieces there that describe the workings of our cosmos and describe the workings of the cosmic stream, and put it together with what we know about the flat Earth already. We'll show that more than likely this is how the Earth actually functions. Now, what I need to get into first to lay the groundwork here and give you guys some context as to what is so important about these pieces and why the Book of Enoch and the Book of Giants are so critically important to flat Earth and to science and to humanity as a whole. Why the Book of Enoch is one of the greatest books ever written. And so what I need to explain here, without those books, we lack the knowledge that we can gain about our Earth en masse. We lose an incredible amount of knowledge. So the Book of Enoch, particularly in its descriptions of the Book of the Luminaries and the course of the heavenly luminaries, 1 Enoch, the course of the heavenly luminaries, what we have in that book is the perfect description of the cosmos. The perfect description, line for line, day by day, month for month, and year for year, of all of time and the workings of the sun, the moon, the stars, the tides, the water cycle, the temperature cycles, summer and winter. It explains every operation of the Earth, and particularly the operations of the firmament, in such a way that no dumb, ignorant desert dweller from 3,000 years ago could just come up with that information. It had to have been derived from some magnificent source. Many people, when they talk about the Book of Genesis, they say that learned writer or that gifted person who was given such gifted knowledge, such incredible knowledge. So if we look back at the way that NASA has lied to us about the heliocentric model and led us completely astray from the reality of our Earth, and we look back and we realize that the Bible was 100% right all along, and particularly 100% right in its descriptions of the firmament and the stars and the workings of the Earth, we see that it's an amazing book and that no one has ever come close to writing such a magnificent piece. It's poetic, it describes morality and history and the future, and it describes perfectly the working, as I've said, of the firmament and of the Earth. So how is it that 3,000 years ago, people with no or very little scientific know-how or knowledge and tools were able to perfectly know the workings of the firmament, and in particular the sun and the moon, and the cycles of the portals that are described in the Book of Enoch? How could any silly desert dweller have put that together? Then when you add that to the references to the conifers, the references to the sides of the north, and their knowledge about where Mount Meru is, and the knowledge of the water cycle, of how it goes to the edge of the firmament and recycles itself back up. All of these knowledges, all of these points that were in there, when you put them all together, that's too much to be coincidental. And it's such a perfect, it is the best descriptions that we have of the working of the earth. Still, to this date, it's some of the best descriptions, and is better even than Robotham and other flat earth scholars, and seems to have more insight into the actual workings of the firmament, the firmadome, than any other source, including the book Heaven and Earth, which does a fantastic job using the cosmic devices and using the cosmic breath stream as an explanation. And even as close as it comes, we see that the book of Enoch is even better. It's even more specific. Then when you combine this with the book of Solomon and the other apocryphal texts and the knowledge therein, we see that the original Bible, in its original form with those apocryphal texts in it, as it was in the Dead Sea Scrolls and the other Qumran caves and Manichaeism and several other sources, we see that the original Bible was a perfect book. It was a perfect double inverted poem. There's a special name for it. And what it means is that, and that's why there's two lines in several of the verses where it seems like it's being repeated. It's actually because it forms the perfect inversion at the other end of the Bible. If you take the Bible and cut it in half, it sort of looks like an upside down pyramid or an upside down triangle on top of another right side triangle. So it looks like this, and I'll give you a picture of it here. And so that's an extremely complex, and you see that pattern go back and forth in it over and over in the Bible. And that's an extremely complex, in fact, the most complex form of poetry. So that's another encoding. We know about the Bible codes and how powerful they were, and how some of them have had incredible clairvoyance or incredible prescience. So when we combine all that and this incredible prose and form of the book to begin with, and then we add the scientific knowledge, which, you know, some people that are flat earthers are against the use of the word scientific, so we could say this is etetic knowledge, or just the cosmic knowledge, where Genesis, the workings of the firmament, the creation, the cave of treasures, how they went through a portal and lost their light bodies, book of Adam and Eve, and the morality and the other encoded knowledge and wisdom that was found encoded there. Then I can also reference that Tesla himself was quoted several times as saying that he used the Bible and thought of it as an encoded way of God speaking, and was able to decode some of the basic functions of the universe, and being that the universe is vibration. And this is another point that we'll need to go into. This is about the Earth's hum and the Earth's vibration. This is part of it. So we've got the Earth's hum. We've got the Kephalaia, which is the monstrosity that controls the ebb and flow of the tides and the winds and the weather. Then we have also the Beka, the oath created at the beginning of time between God and his heavenly hosts that hold up the flat earth and hold up the pillars that hold up the flat earth, and how that oath is important and responsible for the maintenance of the earth in general. And what else have we got? Well, the cosmic breath stream itself is the Kephalaia and the ebb and flow. And then we also need to go back over the weather maps, the flat earth weather map. And I have some other information about clouds that I'm going to include in this and share with it as it's completely relevant. Samyaza knew the name of God and made a deal to give that name to Ishtar. Taba'et, the son of the serpent, or son of serpent, and Kaba'el taught the oath to the humans. And the oath's name is Beka. They asked Michael to enunciate the name so that they might say it in the oath. They placed it in Aka'e in the hand of Michael. The heavens are hung from the oath. So the oath is God's deal, or God's binding arrangement with the stars and with the heavens and with the heavenly appointed angels to conduct their marching orders as he's laid forth in that deal. And it's a contract. So it's the contract or the covenant with God and the angels. And it's the contract and the covenant to hold up their end of the bargain and hold up the universe as we know it, the earth and the clouds and the heavens and everything. The cosmos, the cosmic devices. So we'll carry on. Back to the book of Ogum, or Ogium. So we are therefore left with Gaborim, understood as giants. Parth, KW, Kwa, is freely used in Manichaean texts as of the father of light, of solar deities, also of the first man, and Arhaman, with reference to the first battle, which therefore could have been described as Achaman, and it uses a Greek word for it. However, the word Kwa is applied only to men and such beings as are imagined anthropomorphous. Where one would translate it as monster, the Iranian equivalent is Mazan. Thus, the Kephalaia, whose breathing operations are responsible for ebb and flow, is called Mitzin-i-Rigi in Middle Persian. Accordingly, the related words Mazan, Mazanig, Sogd, Mitzni, and others should be rendered as monster or gigantic, monstrous. Is the cosmic breath streams that were discussed in Heaven and Earth. On the non-revolution of the Earth round the Sun, and on the existence of a summer and of a winter cosmic breath stream. From Heaven and Earth by Gabrielle Henriette. An entirely different and more rational explanation of the cycle of the seasons, based on a reasoned investigation of existing conditions can, however, be given, so that it will no longer be necessary to send the Earth traveling into space to this end. The essential feature of the year is its division into 2 equal periods of 6 months, based first on the predominating length of the days over that of the nights, and vice versa. Conditions which are governed by the varying hours of sunrise and sunset, and secondly, by either high or low height reached by the sun in the heavens at midday. The first cycle, during which the days are longer than the nights and the sun reaches its culminating point of the year, extends from the spring equinox to the autumn equinox, i.e. March 21 to September 22. And the second cycle, during which, inversely, the duration of the nights exceeds that of the days, and the sun descends to its lowest point of the year, extends from the autumn equinox to the spring equinox, i.e. September 23 to March 20. These 2 6-month periods are also characterized by an opposition of temperature. During the first cycle, which corresponds to spring and summer, the heat gradually rises and falls, while during the second cycle, which comprises autumn and winter, it is the intensity of the cold which progressively increases and decreases. It might be said that it is evident that the heat of the summer and the low temperatures of the winter result from either the high or low heat reached by the sun at midday, and also from the alternate predominating length of the days over the nights. Although it might not be absolutely certain that the variations of temperature are entirely due to these particular circumstances. To what reason must be attributed the variations which exist in regard to the sun's daily height and the hours at which it rises and sets, which seem to determine the various temperatures of the year? These regular fluctuations must necessarily have an origin, and it might be remarked that no scientific research or speculation has ever been attempted in this direction. The sun has been compared by the ancients to a chariot drawn by steeds and to a boat manned by rowers, meaning by this that it is not self-propelled. Its movement, therefore, is derived from some external power, and in that case it would appear that the variations in the height of the sun and its hours of rising and setting are due to the passage and to the impulsion of two regular successive currents, or cosmic breath streams, of 6 months each, i.e. a warm, increasing and decreasing breath stream prevailing from the spring equinox to the autumn equinox, followed by a cold, increasing and decreasing breath stream from autumn to spring. And the conclusion is that the impulse of these two summer and winter cosmic breaths govern the height of the sun, and that they also have the effect of either advancing or retarding the hours of sunrise and sunset, on which depend the respective lengths of days and nights. So it's interesting to note here that it may not be that the cosmic breath streams are governing the height of the sun, but they may be a function of the height of the sun. It is therefore the arrival and growing intensity of the warm summer breath stream which from March 21 causes the sun to gradually ascend to its culminating point of the year at the June solstice, and the decreasing intensity of the same warm stream which, after the solstice, causes the height of the sun to decline steadily until 22 September, the moment of the equinox, when the cold current sets in. At the same time, the impulse of this warm cosmic stream has the effect of advancing the hour of sunrise and retarding that of sunset, so that the days become longer than the nights. On the other hand, it is the arrival and growing intensity of the cold winter breath stream about the 23rd September which causes the sun to further descend to its lowest point of the year at December solstice, and the decreasing intensity of this cold breath which, after the winter solstice, causes the sun to rise again until 21 March, when the warm breath takes over. At the same time, the cold current has the effect of retarding the hour of sunrise and of advancing the sunset, whereby nights become longer than the days. As it can be seen, these two semi-annual cosmic streams or currents, warm and cold, each represent a complete breath comprising a rising phase of inspiration from the equinox to the solstice, and a following phase of expiration from the solstice to the following equinox. And it's these two double phases of a duration of 3 months each, controlling the daily height of the sun and the hours of its rising and setting, which causes the 4 seasons. It may be explained that the principle of the existence of cosmic breaths is not new, and that it is to be found in the cosmogonies of the Orient. It has, here in particular, been borrowed from a French translation of Hindu texts in which the movement of the sun was said to respond to the influence of universal streams of breath. The author has adapted this theory to existing circumstances, thus permitting the specific respiratory nature of these cosmic breaths to be discovered. This fact is completely demonstrated apart from the obvious parallel of the phases of inspiration and expiration rhythmically governing the lengths of days and nights and the height of the sun, by a comparison with another factor, which is the pause existing between inspiration and expiration. This pause is precisely reproduced by the solstice, which corresponds to the stoppage of the cosmic breath between the two phases. The existence of a breath governing the movement of the sun becomes here manifest, since the height of the latter at midday does not vary during the solstice interval, nor do the hours of its rising and setting. The respective lengths of the day and of the night remain unchanged, the sun rising and setting at the same hours for no less than 5 days. It could be added, as further proof of the existence of a cosmic breath, that the high temperatures of July and August, which are really abnormal, since it should be cooler as they occur when the days become shorter and the height of the sun decreases, that they are due, in fact, as in the function of respiration, the pressure of the breathing out is greater towards the middle of the expiration phase, and consequently the temperature rises. On the other hand, it is observed that the cold becomes more intense in January and February, although the days are growing longer and the decrease in the intensity of the cold breath is causing the sun to rise. This recrudescence of the cold is due to the same reason of pressure increase in the middle of the phase of expiration, and the cosmic breath being cold, it follows that there is a further drop of temperature during this period, from which it can be seen that the pressure of the respective cosmic breath streams is susceptible of warming or cooling in the atmosphere, as the case may be, regardless of the height of the sun. It may be remarked that during the time of the solstices, when the height of the sun at midday is stabilized for a few days,
either at its highest or lowest point in the heavens, man, by reflex, follows the cosmic conditions by stopping his working activities and taking a rest in fall. These particular moments are also the occasion of great religious Christic festivals, Christmas at the winter solstice and Corpus Christi at the time of the summer solstice, which points undoubtedly to the existence of an association between the sun and Christ. This association exists also in the case of the Easter festival of the resurrection of Christ, which in reality celebrates the solar new year. Easter takes place on the Sunday following the new moon, after the spring equinox on March 21, which date marks the beginning of the spring and summer cycle of the sun, when the height of the latter at noon begins to rise over the equator according to the actual astronomical way of reckoning the solar declination. It is also obvious that the opposition of the seasons north and south of the equator result from a corresponding opposition in the circulation of the two breaths round the earth, i.e. when the warm breath is in the northern hemisphere, the cold one is in the other, and vice versa, so that it is simultaneously summer in one part of the world and winter in the other. Thus, the warm 6-month breath which commenced in the northern hemisphere at the spring equinox comes to an end at the autumn equinox, about the 22nd of September, when the transposition of the warm and cold breath takes place. The warm breath passes in the southern hemisphere for the spring-summer cycle, and at the same time the cold breath leaving said hemisphere enters ours for the autumn-winter cycle. The respective intensities of the two breaths, both at the end of their expiration phase at the moment, are, thus, equalized, so as to permit their transposition. And at the same time, the lengths of the day and night find themselves also equalized to 12 hours each in both hemispheres. It is also most probable that the atmospheric disturbances which prevail at the time of the equinoxes are due to the mutual replacement of the breaths, and to their passage in a different part of the world. It should be added, however, that in the above theory concerning the cycle of the seasons, the cosmic breaths do not act directly on the sun, but that there are intermediate circumstances which will be dealt with later on with regard to the origin itself of the sun. Okay, so coming back from that, from the cosmic breath streams, we can see how it's a great description, and we can see how it works very easily and makes sense to some extent. Obviously, some of the working factors of it would still need to be worked out. So what I think is happening, or a possible part of this, is, as you see here, I'm showing you this. This is the weather patterns over the Earth. See how on the outside here, which would be the southern latitudes, it's moving in this direction, but in what we call the northern latitudes, really the central latitude, the central ring of the Earth, we see that the weather is moving in this direction. It's moving the opposite way. So this again ties in with those breath streams that she's talking about. And it's interesting, if you look at the four corners of the Earth like this, and we think of the four cosmic breath streams, you could see how if they were blowing from this way, from these two directions, east and, well, okay, let's just call it left and right, and if it was blowing in those directions at different altitudes, and then it was blowing in these directions from north and south here, or top, up and down, top and bottom of the picture, that if the breath was being pushed from there, also from different altitudes, what you would create is sort of this toroidal vortex of air in the center. And you see how that would create the four winds. But also, see how they're moving in opposite directions in the north and the south here. It's very hard to explain how that would work, unless if you look at and consider that the dome itself would possibly be separated here, and that one part of the dome, or one portion, is moving in this direction and one is moving in the other. And it would also, if you think about pumps and you think about pneumatics and how to move air, if you have two pieces of glass like that with some sort of a buffer in between them, or an airtight seal in between them, and as you turn it, you would create suction and pressure, which could create the forces of the wind that we're looking at and talking about. So, just lots more interesting stuff to look at that makes more sense to me for our flat Earth model, and makes much more sense to me than obviously the globe model, which is ludicrous, ridiculous. So I hope you guys can see how that ties in there with the glass, or that would make the pump action to create these cosmic breath streams. So after that is created, after it creates the breath streams, that the water cycles on Earth will be a similar, not similar, but that they would run on the same principles and at the same timings, that it would be interlinked and correlated as far as timing. So the water will be part of this action of suction and the action of moving the air. So as the water is drawn into the whirlpool at the North Pole here, this gigantic whirlpool, and as it circles around Mount Meru and plunges down into the depths of the Earth, that would create that suction and pull the air towards that area. And then other air would have to come in from the outside, or from the other parts of the planisphere, to fill in and make up for the diffusion and make up for the loss of that sucked air that's going in at the north here. Copernicus put forward the hypothesis of the revolution of the Earth round the Sun in order to explain the cycle of the seasons. His theory is not very satisfactory, seeing that the Earth is supposed to be at its greatest distance from the Sun in the summer during the hot weather, and at its shortest distance in the winter when the temperature is at its lowest. These unusual conditions, which clearly contradict the laws of nature as regards the effect of heat, are, it is said, due to the angle formed by the rays of the sun as they fall on the Earth's surface. It is also stated that the opposition of the seasons north and south of the equator is due to a tilt of the Earth, first on one side and then on the other, which conveniently occurs at the right moment. Nothing is said, however, of the shifting of the waters of the sea and rivers which this change in the center of gravity and in the position of the Earth would inevitably bring twice a year. It might also be assumed that under those conditions, very high constructions would swerve from the vertical. The American skyscrapers and the Eiffel Tower, for instance, cannot be seen to lean right or left according to the seasons, although this should be a logical and natural consequence of the alternate inclination attributed to the Earth. It must reasonably be said that the circumstances which readily explain in the most extraordinary and unlikely way the cause of the seasons are not credible, especially in view of the fact that Copernicus, when he published his theories on the movement of the Earth in his treatise on the revolution of the celestial spheres in 1543, insisted on their purely hypothetical nature. He said, "The hypothesis of the movement of the Earth is only one which is useful to explain phenomena, but it should not be considered as an absolute truth." It was never his intention, it seems, that his theory should be taken in earnest by his successors.
Device. Functions. So this information comes from the Book of Enoch and the Book of Giants and other ancient fragmentary scripts and texts. And what we're going to do is review some of the pieces there that describe the workings of our cosmos and describe the workings of the cosmic stream, and put it together with what we know about the flat Earth already. We'll show that more than likely this is how the Earth actually functions. Now, what I need to get into first to lay the groundwork here and give you guys some context as to what is so important about these pieces and why the Book of Enoch and the Book of Giants are so critically important to flat Earth and to science and to humanity as a whole. Why the Book of Enoch is one of the greatest books ever written. And so what I need to explain here, without those books, we lack the knowledge that we can gain about our Earth en masse. We lose an incredible amount of knowledge. So the Book of Enoch, particularly in its descriptions of the Book of the Luminaries and the course of the heavenly luminaries, 1 Enoch, the course of the heavenly luminaries, what we have in that book is the perfect description of the cosmos, the perfect description Welcome, everybody. So what we're going to talk today about is the flat Earth and weather and the Kephalaia. And we're going to talk about the ebb and flow and the cosmic devices that run the functions of the changes of weather and temperature and moisture and humidity and all the changes that we see on Earth day to day. And we're going to talk about and explain how that mechanism and that line for line, day by day, month for month, and year for year of all of time and the workings of the sun, the moon, the stars, the tides, the water cycle, the temperature cycles, summer and winter. It explains every operation of the Earth, and particularly the operations of the firmament, in such a way that no dumb, ignorant desert dweller from 3,000 years ago could just come up with that information. It had to have been derived from some magnificent source. Many people, when they talk about the book of Genesis, they say that learned writer or that gifted person who was given such gifted knowledge, such incredible knowledge. So if we look back at the way that NASA has lied to us about the heliocentric model and led us completely astray from the reality of our Earth, and we look back and we realize that the Bible was 100% right all along, and particularly 100% right in its descriptions of the firmament and the stars and the workings of the Earth, we see that it's an amazing book and that no one has ever come close to writing such a magnificent piece. It's poetic, it describes morality and history and the future, and it describes perfectly the working, as I've said, of the firmament and of the Earth. So how is it that these